Billionaire and Mistress caught in hotel lobby by his pregnant wife in heartbreaking moment. A crisp December wind swept through the bustling streets of Manhattan as Amelia Hawthorne, 7 months pregnant and aching with suspicion, hurried into the opulent foyer of the Grand Regency Hotel. Her heart thundered with each step, fearing the scene she might encounter. For weeks, rumors had swirled of her billionaire husband, Alexander Crowley, entertaining a mysterious companion behind her back. Tonight, all doubts would be laid to rest. As she pushed through the crowd, Amelia spotted Alexander's unmistakable profile across the marble-tiled lobby. And there, clinging to his arm, stood the very woman who haunted her nightmares. Nothing would ever be the same. Alexander Crowley's life had always glimmered with the sheen of prestige, wealth, and seemingly limitless power. Born into an influential family in the Hamptons, he was groomed from childhood to helm the Crowley Group, a multinational conglomerate spanning luxury hotels, tech ventures, and real estate developments across the globe. The press painted him as a charismatic visionary, a modern-day prince of Manhattan who donated generously to philanthropic causes. Articles in the Wall Street Journal lauded his business acumen. Gossip columns praised his social flair. But behind the polished exterior was a man haunted by his own restlessness. Alexander had married Amelia Hawthorne in a whirlwind romance, capturing hearts and headlines with their picturesque courtship. Amelia was the daughter of a retired diplomat, reserved yet possessing a quiet grace that perfectly tempered Alexander's more boisterous persona. Their wedding at the Crowley family estate overlooking the Atlantic Ocean was the toast of high society, with guests like Bernard Addison, a private name known in philanthropic circles for his quiet support of children's hospitals, and foreign dignitaries from Europe filling the expansive gardens. In the early years, the couple's union was a beacon of promise. Amelia quickly became a beloved figure at charity galas and fundraising events. She brought sincerity and warmth to causes Alexander supported largely for publicity. Where he wrote sizable checks to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she would volunteer her weekends in the archives, collaborating with curators. When he pledged millions to cancer research, she personally visited oncology wards with care packages, forging genuine bonds with patients. Yet as the Crowley Group expanded, so did Alexander's obligations. His hours grew longer, his attention divided by 1,000 urgent demands. At first, Amelia accepted his absences as the cost of success. But each corporate victory demanded more from Alexander: more travel, more late-night calls, more hush meetings in exclusive clubs or 5-star lounges. Her pleas for him to slow down went unheard. After 3 years of marriage, Amelia learned she was pregnant. She hoped the news would tether Alexander more firmly to home, but if anything, he seemed even more elusive. When she was 5 months along, she found a platinum bracelet in his car, clearly not her taste or size. His explanation that it was a gift for a business associate's wife left her uneasy, though she tried not to dwell on it. Yet, the distance between them kept growing. A new wave of suspicion seized her when she received an anonymous text stating, "Your husband isn't as devoted as he seems." The message offered no proof but rattled her deeply. She confided in her dear friend, Elizabeth Townsend, a genealogist turned philanthropic consultant who insisted that Amelia keep her eyes open and protect herself, especially with a baby on the way. As the chill of winter settled over Manhattan, Amelia's anxiety mounted. She had never been the type to indulge paranoid thoughts. Alexander had promised her the world. After all, but something felt amiss. She had no idea that her quiet dread would explode into a very public heartbreak. The fateful confrontation awaited her in the grandest hotel lobby in the city, where illusions would be shattered and loyalties tested in front of a crowd that would never forget the scene. It began with furtive glances and hushed conversations at exclusive parties. The circles Alexander Crowley moved in had an unspoken code: protect your own. But in high society, scandal is currency. When a rumor swirled, it often arrived cloaked in uncertain half-truths, but carried the destructive force of a storm. Amelia first encountered the rumors through a casual remark at an art auction for the Guggenheim Museum. She was trying to distract herself by bidding on a painting from a rising avant-garde artist. A friend of a friend, Natalie Sinclair, a collector known for her pointed gossip, leaned over and whispered, "I've heard your husband's been spending late nights at the Beaumont Hotel lounge, but I'm sure it's just business." The mention of a hotel lounge, especially one nowhere near Alexander's usual haunts, set Amelia's nerves on edge. She tried to brush it off. "Alexander's schedule is unpredictable," she replied with forced calm. "He's probably entertaining potential investors." But Natalie's knowing smile stoked the embers of Amelia's fears. When Amelia confronted Alexander later that night, he dismissed the notion. "The Beaumont? I hate that place," he said, casually undoing his cufflinks. "Their staff is incompetent, and the food is mediocre. People will say anything to drum up a scandal." He kissed her cheek with a casual air. "Besides, I'm far too busy with the new acquisition talks to lounge around at hotels." For a moment, Amelia almost believed him until, a week later, she heard the rumor again, this time from an employee at the Crowley Group offices who insisted on anonymity. The employee called Amelia, stammering, "I don't mean to alarm you, Mrs. Crowley, but I've seen Mr. Crowley's name in the Beaumont Hotel's guest logs. I only discovered this while handling some expense forms. Please don't mention my name. I just feel you should know." Amelia's stomach clenched. She did her best to remain poised, but her voice shook when she thanked the person. Anxiety gnawed at her, yet confronting Alexander yielded little more than his exasperated denial. "You think I'm lying about a random hotel I never set foot in? Honestly, Amelia," he said, voice heavy with irritation, "you need to trust me. I have no reason to hide anything." In these weeks of quiet turmoil, Amelia found an unlikely ally in Bernard Addison, the private donor who had become a friend over her philanthropic works. Bernard was a widower in his 60s, a fatherly figure who recognized the strain in Amelia's eyes. He gently probed her during a fundraising dinner for a children's hospital. "My dear, you seem worried. Is everything all right at home?" he asked softly, clasping her hand. Amelia tried to muster a reassuring smile. "Just pregnancy nerves, Bernard," she lied, hating how unconvincing she sounded. Bernard gave a solemn nod, his gaze full of concern. "If you ever need assistance, personal or otherwise, please let me know. I have resources and connections that might be of use." In her bed at night, Amelia turned over these hushed words, uncertain which path to take. Should she hire an investigator? Should she keep confronting Alexander until he broke? Deep down, fear tangled with hope. She longed for these whispers to be unfounded. Surely her husband wouldn't betray her while she was carrying their child, would he? The question loomed, unanswered. And day by day, the tension drew them all closer to that fateful moment in the gilded halls of the Grand Regency, where truth, no matter how devastating, would finally be laid bare. In the hush of early morning, Alexander glanced at his phone and saw the name Serena Delgado light up the screen. He felt a pang of guilt, overshadowed by a jolt of anticipation. Serena was the new CFO of an international finance firm that the Crowley Group considered partnering with a woman known for her brilliance, her unyielding negotiations, and her mesmerizing presence. Their professional interactions had quickly turned personal, fueled by late-night strategy sessions that bled into intimate dinners. Serena Delgado came from a modest background in Spain, forging her path to success through relentless ambition and an uncanny ability to outmaneuver competitors. Her figure was tall, willowy, always draped in designer suits, with just the right balance of allure and authority. The first time Alexander met her, they had clashed over contract terms. While he found her sharp mind impressive, it was her fearless approach that captivated him. She insisted on meeting him at an upscale lounge one evening to smooth out details, and from there, a slow but inevitable dance of seduction began. In the back of his mind, Alexander knew the line he was crossing. He was married, his wife expecting their first child. Yet every time Serena brushed his arm, every time her dark eyes locked onto his with silent promise, he found it harder to remember the commitment he'd made to Amelia. Their rendezvous at the Beaumont Hotel lounge was supposed to remain discreet, a glass of whiskey or champagne, hushed conversation in a corner booth. Once, after an especially intense board meeting, he had even rented a private suite for them to finalize urgent documents. Their entanglement escalated from borderline impropriety to full-blown affair. Serena was not naive about Amelia's existence. She had glimpsed the wedding band on Alexander's hand, heard rumors of the pregnancy, but each time she pressed him, Alexander made vague claims. "My marriage isn't what it seems," or "Amelia's more a social partner these days." Perhaps that small wedge of doubt soothed Serena's conscience, enough for her to continue. Soon Serena's name appeared on Alexander's phone, more than any colleague's. He tried to justify it. After all, she represented a major business deal. But each message was tinted with a personal undercurrent. Each phone call extended beyond the usual pleasantries. She would text him at odd hours, "I'm thinking of you," or "Miss our last conversation." He replied with unsteady excitement, telling himself he could juggle these compartments of his life as long as he remained discreet. But in Manhattan's glass towers and social spheres, secrets never remained secret for long. Hotel staff recognized Alexander's face. An ambitious bellhop once snapped a photo of him walking side by side with Serena, arms brushing in an unmistakably intimate manner. Another staffer overheard one of their heated arguments in the corridor about stepping out of line and keeping things under control. Bit by bit, an undercurrent of scandal formed. And while Alexander told Serena they must be cautious, a part of him savored the risk. Each time they rendezvoused, the tension in his chest soared, overshadowing the guilt that swirled in the corners of his mind. He had no inkling that the illusions he'd so carefully maintained would soon collapse in the most public and heartbreaking way possible. For Amelia, the final straw came on a tranquil Sunday afternoon. She had been rummaging through the study in search of property deeds for the new vacation home. Alexander was planning in Aspen. Stacked neatly in a corner of the desk were some hotel invoices. One, from the Grand Regency, listed multiple charges: dinner for two at the hotel's Michelin-starred restaurant, an upgraded suite on the executive floor, and a spa session, none of which had occurred in her presence. The dates clashed painfully with nights Alexander claimed to be traveling for urgent business in Chicago. Her hands shook as she read line after line. The cost of the dinner alone nearly matched a month's rent for most families. She felt a mix of dread and anger, the sense that every quiet suspicion from the last several months was validated. This was not the Beaumont Hotel, the place rumored in whispers, but the more prestigious Grand Regency. Why had Alexander concealed these reservations? Desperate for clarity, Amelia considered her next move. She recalled Bernard Addison's gentle offer of assistance. Taking a deep breath, she dialed his number, her voice wavering as she explained what she had found. Bernard listened, the empathy evident in his tone. "Amelia, if you need a private investigator to verify these suspicions, I can recommend someone trustworthy. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" Amelia paused, gazing at the framed ultrasound picture on her desk. The baby's shape was clear, a little life formed from the union she once cherished. I must know the truth, she decided. No matter how devastating, ignorance would be worse. Bernard introduced her to David Morales, a discreet investigator known for handling delicate cases among the wealthy. They met in a cozy cafe on the Upper East Side, far from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. Morales, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, listened intently as Amelia explained the predicament. He nodded solemnly. I understand, Mrs. Crowley. Discretion is paramount. I will need access to any suspicious documents, phone records if possible, and details about Mr. Crowley's schedule. Despite feeling uneasy, Amelia provided what he requested. A pang of guilt gnawed at her. She was effectively spying on her husband. But each time she felt a flicker of remorse, she reminded herself of the baby. This child deserved a stable home, a father who wasn't living a lie. If Alexander was betraying her, she needed to know before the birth. As the days passed, Morales occasionally updated her. Alexander's car had been spotted near the Grand Regency multiple times, often at odd hours. Security footage showed him entering through side entrances. And most damningly, he was almost always accompanied by a slender, dark-haired woman, Serena Delgado. That name surfaced quickly once Morales' Cross referenced the woman's license plates with a corporate database. Serena Delgado, CFO for a major finance firm. No official ties to Crowley Group, but rumored to be in negotiations. Amelia felt her throat tighten. The notion that it might be purely business vanished when Morales sent a photograph. Alexander's hand at the small of Serena's back as they headed into a private elevator. Watching her husband's arm around another woman felt like a physical blow. Amelia realized that every denial he had offered had been laced with deceit. Still, part of her clung to the slightest chance that there could be an explanation. But as Morales' investigation deepened, the truth became stark, painful, and undeniable. The day for confrontation neared like a train on a fixed track, unstoppable and ominous. Alexander sensed the shift in Amelia's demeanor before any direct confrontation. She grew quieter, more distant, and her once gentle eyes now flickered with wounded suspicion whenever he came home late. He tried to maintain his usual routine compliments, sweet gestures, discussing baby names, but her responses were colder, guarded. One evening, he noticed how she refused his offer to massage her aching feet, a common bedtime ritual they'd shared. Instead, she simply said, "I'm fine," before turning away. That short phrase cut deeper than any heated argument could have. Guilt churned in him, but he reassured himself that everything would pass if he played his cards right, keep Serena satisfied, keep Amelia in the dark. However, a phone call from Serena one night escalated tensions to a breaking point. She was furious about rumors swirling in her own office. Someone had spotted them together, and she was worried it might jeopardize the finance firm's reputation. "We can't keep sneaking around like this, Alexander," Serena hissed into the phone. "Either end this or come clean. I won't be strung along indefinitely." Alexander was equally tense. "I told you my marriage is complicated. Amelia's pregnant. I can't just," he swallowed, uncertain how to finish that sentence. Could he truly consider leaving Amelia now? The question hung in the air, fueling Serena's anger. Unbeknownst to him, Amelia stood in the hallway outside the bedroom, overhearing fragments of the conversation. Words like "marriage is complicated and can't keep sneaking around" rang in her ears. Her heart pounded, eyes filling with tears. Quietly, she retreated to the living room, sinking onto a sofa in shock. Any illusions that it might be a misunderstanding or an overblown rumor dissolved in that moment. The next morning, with puffy eyes and trembling lips, Amelia tried to muster the courage to confront Alexander directly. But as he waltzed into the kitchen, coffee in hand, rummaging through emails on his phone, she found herself unable to speak. She felt both weak and furious at her silence. Instead, she called David Morales. "It's confirmed," she said shakily. "I heard him. He's definitely with her." Morales sensed the heartbreak in her voice. "Miss S. Crowley, I've got one last piece of information you might want to see. Serena Delgado is checking in at the Grand Regency tonight for a finance summit. I have strong reason to believe your husband will join her. Maybe this is your chance to—" Amelia inhaled sharply. Confronting them seemed terrifying, but a quiet determination hardened within her. Could she endure seeing them together with her own eyes? She glanced at her growing belly, protective instincts flaring. Perhaps this was the only way to break the denial for him and for herself. That night, while Alexander claimed he was heading to a late corporate meeting, Amelia sent a brief text to Morales, instructing him to follow closely. She then mustered her courage, slipped on a warm coat over her maternity dress, and set out for the Grand Regency, heart pounding like a drum beat. She had no plan for what she'd do if she caught them. All she knew was that the truth demanded witness, and the moment of reckoning had arrived. The Grand Regency stood as a beacon of luxury along Manhattan's Fifth Avenue, its facade illuminated by towering spotlights. Entering the lobby was like stepping into another world, towering marble columns, a shimmering chandelier overhead, bellhops scurrying with polished luggage carts, and the constant hum of hushed conversation. Amelia had attended galas here before, but tonight the grandiose surroundings felt cold and oppressive. She clutched her purse, inside which she'd stashed documents Morales had collected, photographic evidence of Alexander's infidelity. She was unsure why she brought them, perhaps as a final bulwark, in case he dared to deny what she was about to see. Her heart thundered in her chest, each contraction of fear making her conscious of the life stirring in her womb. A wave of nausea hit as she spotted a familiar silhouette strolling across the far side of the lobby. There stood Alexander, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his posture exuding confidence. And next to him, Serena Delgado, in a sleek black dress that revealed her elegant figure and exuded self-assurance. They spoke closely, eyes locked, smiles dancing on their lips. Amelia's stomach lurched with betrayal. She pressed herself behind a tall arrangement of orchids, peeking out as Alexander led Serena toward the elevator bank. She could have let them pass, but rage flared within her. She had come here for the truth, and there it was, brazenly on display. No more illusions, no more half-truths or lies. Summoning what felt like the last vestiges of her courage, Amelia stepped forward, a trembling lioness unwilling to hide. Just then, as if guided by fate, Alexander glanced over his shoulder and froze. Their eyes met across the expanse of the lobby. A flicker of panic flashed in his expression. Serena followed his gaze, her face contorting into a startled gasp. For a heartbeat, no one moved. It was as if time itself ground to a halt, capturing the heartbreak in a single snapshot. A curious hush fell over the surrounding guests. Some recognized the famed billionaire, others were simply drawn by the tension crackling in the air. Alexander dropped Serena's arm and took a hesitant step forward. "Amelia, what are you doing here?" His voice was tight, forced. She could barely breathe. "I came for answers," she managed, lifting her chin to meet his gaze. Her eyes darted to Serena. "Though it seems I already have them." Serena flushed, her poise slipping. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, glancing at Alexander for support. Amelia's anger flared, fueled by months of suspicion and heartbreak. "Really? Because it looks like my husband is waltzing around with another woman while I'm carrying his child." Her voice broke on the last word. The baby gave a little kick inside her, as if protesting the tension. Alexander closed the distance, arms raised in a calming gesture. The pungent mix of cologne and guilt emanated from him. "Let's not make a scene," he hissed quietly, though his eyes betrayed desperation. "We can discuss this upstairs privately." But Amelia stood her ground, chest heaving with raw emotion. She noticed the phone cameras already raised by onlookers. A public humiliation, yes, but also a public unveiling of the truth. "No," she said in a trembling voice. "We'll talk right here, because I won't hide anymore. Not for you, not for anyone." Her voice resonated through the lavish marble halls, forging the first crack in the facade of a marriage that once appeared golden. The moment had arrived, and neither Alexander nor Serena could escape the storm that Amelia unleashed. A circle of spectators formed, their whispers swirling like a gust of wind across the polished floors of the Grand Regency lobby. Socialites, tourists, and staff alike, nobody could resist the magnetic pull of this unfolding spectacle. The air buzzed with the electricity of impending scandal, the tension so thick it felt like it could fracture the very walls. Alexander's composure threatened to snap. He had spent years mastering the art of public poise at charity auctions, board meetings, press interviews, but never had he been confronted so brazenly, especially by his pregnant wife. "Amelia," he pleaded under his breath, "let's not do this here, please." His gaze flicked to the crowd and the phones recording them. Amelia's cheeks burned with shame, but she refused to waver. "You ignored my calls. You lied to my face. For months, I've been left alone and pregnant while you've been—" Her voice caught, tears brimming in her eyes as she eyed Serena. With her, Serena tried to maintain an icy front, her carefully curated elegance beginning to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny. She shot a glare at Alexander, as if blaming him for the situation. "One didn't know she would be here," she muttered, voice quivering. The tension escalated when a tall, silver-haired figure emerged from the front desk area, Bernard Addison. His expression was grave, carrying the sort of fatherly concern that cut through the spectacle. He approached Amelia, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "My dear, are you all right?" Amelia shook her head, tears streaming now. She couldn't speak around the lump in her throat. Bernard turned a stern gaze on Alexander, his voice low but firm. "Is this how you treat the woman carrying your child, Alexander? Did you truly think you'd keep this hidden?" Alexander's face drained of color, his authority eroded by the sheer magnitude of the moment. "This is complicated," he stuttered. "Serena and we were discussing a business deal. We got close. Yes, but," Bernard's voice sharpened, "don't insult Amelia's intelligence by claiming it's merely business." A hush followed. The onlookers, phones raised, captured every flicker of heartbreak on Amelia's face, every anxious twitch of Serena's posture, every flicker of shame crossing Alexander's features. It was the modern gauntlet trial by public opinion, right there in the lobby. In the silence, Amelia gathered her courage. She clutched her belly, feeling the baby shift in response to her elevated heartbeat. "You owe me the truth," she managed, voice unsteady. "Tell me everything right now. Who is she to you?" Alexander glanced desperately at Serena, who lowered her gaze. Something in him cracked. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the realization that he could no longer spin illusions. We've been seeing each other," he admitted, voice trembling. "It started out as work, but then—" He couldn't finish. The raw admission hung in the air, final and irrevocable. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amelia felt as if the ground beneath her had crumbled. She reached out instinctively for Bernard's arm to steady herself. Time seemed to slow, the beating of her heart echoing in her ears like thunder. She thought of the nights she prayed for this moment not to be real, the months of suspecting, doubting, and hoping he was still the man she married. But there he stood, acknowledging his affair under the merciless glare of the chandelier. In that single instant, her world shattered, and no apology could mend the wreckage. The lights of the Grand Regency lobby felt glaring and merciless as Amelia struggled to steady her breath. She was dimly aware of cameras pointed her way, of guests whispering, but the magnitude of Alexander's confession consumed her mind. She felt weightless, unmoored from reality, like a nightmare come to life. Bernard Addison clasped her hand, silently conveying his support. This small gesture fortified her enough to stand upright, tears cutting hot paths down her cheeks. She could barely meet Alexander's eyes, anger and devastation waging war within her. How could you?" she choked out. "We were building a family. I believed you." Alexander raked a hand through his hair, eyes wild with desperation. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." He reached out as though to place a hand on her arm, but she shrank away. Serena, for her part, appeared trapped between shame and self-preservation. She looked at Alexander accusingly. "You told me your marriage was in name only," she whispered. "You never said your wife was pregnant." At that, Amelia's anger roared. She rounded on Serena, pain giving her voice an unexpected ferocity. "Don't you dare feign innocence. You knew he was married. You knew he had responsibilities. And you," she paused, trembling, "you helped him destroy everything." Serena's cheeks blazed. She glanced around, eyes wide at the watchers. "I didn't realize it would come to this," she managed, but the pitiful defense sounded hollow. Apologies, justifications, attempts at dignity, none of it could salvage the reality that she had become the other woman, caught out in the most public way. A wave of dizziness washed over Amelia, and Bernard grasped her elbow to steady her. "Breathe, my dear," he murmured. The concern etched on his face reminded Amelia she had to protect herself and her baby. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, forcing in shallow breaths. Finally, Amelia looked at Alexander, the tears in her eyes not extinguishing the resolve in her voice. "I'm leaving," she declared, each word slicing through the hush. "I don't care about the stairs or the cameras, but I refuse to stand here in humiliation one moment longer." Turning to Bernard, she quietly asked, "Will you take me home?" Bernard nodded with a solemn expression. Of course, the older man guided Amelia through the throng. The hush lingered, parting the crowd like a biblical exodus. Onlookers stepped back, uncertain whether to offer sympathy or simply watch the spectacle. Alexander trailed a few steps behind, torn between chasing after Amelia and dealing with the chaos he'd unleashed. As they reached the door, Amelia turned back, delivering one final blow. "Don't follow me," she said through gritted teeth. "Right now, I need to protect myself and our child from you. Until you're ready to own what you've done and face the consequences, we have nothing to talk about." The words left Alexander standing motionless in the center of the lobby, Serena at his side, the cameras still rolling. Outside, Amelia stepped into Bernard's waiting car, her hands shaking around her phone as the magnitude of heartbreak seeped into her bones. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, only that the life she'd known was irrevocably changed. In the immediate aftermath of that explosive night, the press descended like vultures. Tabloid headlines screamed, "Billionaire Alexander Crowley's pregnant wife confronts Mistress in hotel lobby." Social media buzzed with shaky cell phone footage, capturing every heart-wrenching detail. Overnight, Alexander went from revered business mogul to the face of a scandal riveting the city. Amelia woke the next morning in the guest room of Bernard Addison's townhouse. Exhaustion weighed her down, both physically and emotionally, yet rest had been elusive. Each time she closed her eyes, she replayed the moment she saw Alexander and Serena in the lobby, the shock in his expression, the pitying stares of strangers. Bernard's housekeeper had brought tea and toast, but she could barely stomach a bite. Bernard, ever the guardian, approached gently. "Take your time, Amelia," he said, voice soft. If you need a lawyer or anything else, I'll make the arrangements. I want you and the baby to be safe. Amelia's head pounded with the swirl of decisions she faced. She knew she must see a doctor to ensure the stress hadn't harmed the pregnancy. Then there was the question of whether to return to the Crowley penthouse or remain elsewhere. Divorcing Alexander loomed as a terrifying possibility, but the thought of continuing the marriage as if nothing had happened felt unimaginable. Meanwhile, Alexander retreated to the penthouse alone. The place seemed empty without Amelia, her presence, once so comforting, now replaced by accusing silence. After tossing and turning on the sofa all night, he spent the early morning on damage control. His public relations team bombarded him with calls. Investors were concerned. The Crowley Group's board demanded an emergency meeting about the potential financial repercussions of a very public marital scandal. Handle it quickly, they urged. Salvage your reputation, or at least keep your personal life separate from company affairs. Alexander's attempts to call Amelia went straight to voicemail. He texted her repeatedly, apologizing, begging her to talk. No response. In desperation, he reached out to Serena, whose phone also rang unanswered. When he finally reached her office line, she was curt and distant. The situation is out of control, she snapped. My firm is furious. Our deal might collapse. Fix it, or I'll speak with my lawyers. His illusions of balancing wife and mistress had shattered in spectacular fashion. Now, he faced losing everything: his wife, his unborn child, and the meticulously curated public image that underpinned his business empire. Amelia, for her part, found a small measure of relief with Bernard's quiet support. Over a late breakfast, she confided her fears. I'm not just heartbroken, I'm furious. But I don't want our child born into bitterness. If Alexander and I end up separating, how do we navigate custody or finances? Bernard listened intently. You must speak with a family lawyer. I know a reputable one, Lydia Marlowe. She's handled complicated, high-profile divorces discreetly. Even if you're not certain about divorce, get legal clarity on your rights. Amelia hesitated, tears threatening again. Part of me still loves him, she whispered, but I also feel so betrayed. She pressed a hand to her belly, imagining the little life inside, oblivious to the heartbreak unfolding. Whatever happens, I must protect this child. On that day after the storm, as Manhattan gossiped about their drama, Amelia took her first steps towards self-preservation. Stripped of illusion, she was determined to face the future on her own terms, even if it meant standing up to the man she once adored. A week passed in a haze of heartbreak and legal consultations. Amelia found herself in Lydia Marlowe's sleek office overlooking Central Park, guided there by Bernard Addison's introduction. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, a stark reminder of the empire Alexander ruled and of the battle that might lie ahead if a divorce ensued. Lydia, a poised woman in her 40s, scanned the documents Amelia had brought: financial statements, property deeds, bank account details. You're in a strong position legally, she said gently, but marital disputes involving significant wealth often turn vicious. I'll ensure you and your child are protected, no matter what you decide. Amelia chewed her lip. I don't know if I'm ready to divorce him, she admitted, tears threatening. I just need some clarity to know my rights if it comes to that. Lydia nodded. You're wise to be prepared. I'd advise a formal separation agreement if you choose to live apart. We can set terms for financial support during your pregnancy and after the birth. Are you comfortable with that? Amelia paused, thinking of Alexander's contrite texts and voicemails. He sounded genuinely remorseful, but trust was a fragile thing now. Yes, she finally said. Let's do that. While Amelia braced herself for legal fortifications, Alexander faced a gauntlet at Crowley Group's headquarters. The boardroom was tense, filled with stoic executives and PR consultants. A large screen displayed news clips rehashing the hotel lobby scene. Rumors of corporate fallout loomed. Would potential partners back away, worried about negative press? Alexander, one grey-haired board member, sighed. This scandal undermines confidence in your leadership. We can't have investors thinking your personal issues will jeopardize the company. Alexander, disheveled and anxious, tried to salvage the situation. I'm prepared to make a public statement apologizing for any personal misconduct and affirming the separation of my private life from Crowley Group operations. We are finalizing a major acquisition, and I won't let my personal challenges derail it. The board tentatively agreed to let him proceed, but the mood was grim, and Alexander realized with cold certainty how precarious his position had become. On top of that, Serena Delgado's firm remained on the fence about the partnership. She had texted him ominous warnings. Sort this out, or we walk. The threat to his business empire was real and immediate. Yet none of that weighed as heavily as the fear of losing Amelia, losing the chance to be a father to their baby. Late that evening, Alexander mustered the courage to show up at Bernard Addison's townhouse. Ignoring the swirling paparazzi who quickly congregated outside, Bernard answered, gaze impassive. I need to see her, Alexander said, chest tight. Please, Bernard, let me talk to my wife. Bernard nodded solemnly and led him to the drawing room. Amelia sat on a satin armchair, posture rigid, her eyes red from tears. In that moment, Alexander felt more powerless than ever before. No amount of wealth or charm could redeem him unless Amelia chose to let him back in. He knelt beside her, voice trembling. I'm sorry, he said, tears glazing his eyes. I betrayed you. I risked our family. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll do anything. Amelia's throat constricted. She studied the man who once swept her off her feet. You need to tell me the truth, she whispered. No more half-lies. Why did you do it, Alexander? And how can I ever believe in you again? His breathing ragged, Alexander confessed. The allure of Serena, the thrill of something forbidden, the reckless belief he could keep all parts of his life separate. He spoke of his own insecurities, how sometimes, ironically, he felt overshadowed by Amelia's genuine goodness. He apologized over and over, voice cracking with remorse. Amelia listened silently, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wanted to rail at him, to cry out that it wasn't enough, but the little flutters in her belly reminded her that she still needed him in some capacity for their child's sake. If nothing else, I can't promise forgiveness, she managed, and I won't allow you back without proof you'll change. Alexander bowed his head. I understand, he whispered. I'll do anything. Therapy, separation of assets, a prenuptial addendum, whatever you need to feel safe. The raw, painful honesty hung in the air. Behind them, Bernard quietly left the room, giving them space. For once, Alexander Crowley seemed truly vulnerable, stripped of the bravado that once defined him. Whether it was too late to repair the damage remained a question only time and Amelia could answer. 2 weeks later, Manhattan's swirling rumors began to calm, replaced by fresh scandals in the relentless news cycle. But for Amelia and Alexander, the real work had just begun. Per Lydia Marlowe's advice, they signed a temporary separation agreement. Amelia remained under Bernard Addison's protective roof, while Alexander stayed in the penthouse that now felt hauntingly empty. The separation also extended to their business affairs. Alexander agreed to place certain assets in trust for Amelia and their future child. It was a gesture of penance, a tangible step to show he was serious about rectifying his betrayal. Yet every time he tried to see Amelia, she insisted on careful boundaries. If they met, it was in neutral places, a counselor's office or a quiet cafe on the Upper East Side. They began couples therapy with Dr. Marilyn Porter, a soft-spoken psychologist known for her success with high-profile clients. Dr. Porter had them meet individually first. Amelia poured out her heartbreak and rage, describing nights spent weeping over the illusions she once cherished. Meanwhile, Alexander confessed the self-sabotaging impulses that led him astray, an admission that left him drained and ashamed. When the two finally sat together in Dr. Porter's office, tension crackled in the air. Amelia's eyes were red-rimmed, her posture defensive, while Alexander looked haggard. The therapist guided them through carefully framed questions. What do you want for your child? Can trust be rebuilt after betrayal? Neither had answers, but at least they were speaking truths in a safe environment. While therapy sessions probed their emotional wounds, a separate drama played out at Crowley Group. The prospective deal with Serena Delgado's finance firm teetered on the edge of collapse. Serena, stung by the public fallout, maintained a distant but pointed stance. Her superiors demanded clarifications about the scandal, worried it would reflect poorly on them. Alexander found himself walking a diplomatic tightrope, alternating between apologizing to Amelia in therapy and negotiating with Serena in tense boardroom calls. One day, Serena cornered Alexander in the hallway outside a meeting with attorneys. "We need a private conversation," she said through gritted teeth. They found an empty conference room, the walls lined with marble plaques commemorating Crowley Group milestones. Serena's cold gaze pinned him. "You're letting your personal mess sabotage everything. My company is on the verge of pulling out. I could lose my job over this fiasco." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I'm dealing with it," he said tersely. "My wife and I are in therapy, but that doesn't mean we can wave a wand and fix everything overnight." Serena exhaled, frustration etched in every line of her face. "You told me your marriage was over in all but name. Now she's pregnant. You're running back to her. Do you expect me to just stand aside while my career goes up in flames?" A dull ache of guilt settled in Alexander's chest. "I never intended to ruin you," he admitted quietly. "But the truth is, I was wrong. I betrayed Amelia, and I have to try to make things right. I'm sorry for the pain you're facing, but it's not my top priority anymore." Their eyes locked, each acknowledging a disastrous entanglement that had no graceful exit. With a final glare, Serena spun on her heel and left. Alexander lingered, feeling the weight of his actions like a chain pulling him under. Even if he saved his marriage, it would come at a cost, one that Serena and the business might never forgive. Amelia's pregnancy advanced into the third trimester, her body growing heavier with each passing week. She found solace in small routines: morning walks around Bernard Addison's garden, prenatal yoga classes, reading every baby book she could get her hands on. Yet no amount of structured activity could fully mute the ache of betrayal. During couples therapy, she revealed how Serena's presence haunted her thoughts. Even if Alexander claimed to have ended the affair, Amelia worried every time he stayed late at the office or traveled for a meeting. "I can't just trust you again," she told him bluntly, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You taught me that trust is fragile." Alexander bowed his head, acknowledging her pain. "I know. I'll do whatever I can to earn it back, step by step. If it takes months or years, I won't give up." In that moment, Amelia felt a flicker of the love that once bound them. She recalled the grand gestures Alexander used to display, like flying her to Paris for a weekend picnic at the Seine, or surprising her with a room full of roses on her birthday. But she also remembered the heartbreak in the Grand Regency lobby. "Nothing is so easily forgotten," she reminded herself. Meanwhile, the business negotiations with Serena's firm dissolved entirely. Under pressure from executives and facing personal scandal, Serena Delgado resigned, rumored to be leaving New York for a quiet retreat in Europe. The press devoured every last morsel of the affair's fallout, though their interest waned as new headlines emerged. The Crowley group sustained a temporary dip in public trust, but Alexander's PR team minimized the damage. Slowly, the scandal receded from the public eye. Behind closed doors, though, the emotional wreckage remained. Alexander confided in Dr. Porter about his guilt, describing nights he spent sitting in the empty nursery at the penthouse, imagining the child who might never know a united family. "Sometimes, I'm terrified Amelia will finalize a divorce, and I'll only see my baby on weekends," he admitted. "I don't want that life." Dr. Porter's reply was measured. "Fear alone doesn't rebuild a marriage, Alexander. Actions do. Consistency, honesty, showing up, and never giving her a reason to doubt you again." Encouraged by therapy, Alexander offered to accompany Amelia to her prenatal checkups. At first she declined, still feeling too raw, but as her due date neared, she reluctantly agreed. Their first appointment together proved tense but significant. Watching the ultrasound technician trace the baby's heartbeat, hearing that steady whoosh, bound them momentarily in shared wonder. Outside the exam room, Amelia braced herself to speak. "Seeing you here, it gives me hope. But we're not magically fixed. Once the baby arrives, the real test begins. I need to know you won't revert to your old ways." Alexander met her gaze, sincerity etched in his features. "I understand. I'll be here every step of the way." Yet as they parted, a gulf still yawned between them, an unspoken knowledge that love, once shattered, might never be the same. For Amelia, healing would come slowly, if at all. For Alexander, redemption would be an ongoing journey, haunted by the echoes of regret that reminded him how close he'd come to losing everything. Late summer arrived, with a warm haze settling over Manhattan. Amelia, nearing the final month of her pregnancy, experienced a roller coaster of emotions, anxious about the baby's imminent birth, uncertain about whether to forgive Alexander fully or start anew alone. She continued therapy, rotating between individual sessions to process her hurt and couples sessions to gauge whether Alexander's remorse had roots deep enough to foster real change. One humid evening, Alexander invited her to dinner at the penthouse. He kept it simple, a homemade pasta dish he'd learned from his Italian housekeeper, fresh flowers from the local florist, and soft background music in the dimly lit living room. She arrived with apprehension fluttering in her chest. Yet the moment she stepped inside, a wave of nostalgia swept over her. She remembered the early days of their marriage, laughter echoing in these very halls. Carefree jokes about future children they hoped to have. Dinner passed with gentle conversation. They spoke about the baby's nursery theme. Amelia leaned toward a nature-inspired palette, while Alexander mentioned star decals on the ceiling. For a moment, they slipped into something resembling normalcy, sharing hopes for the future. Then, as they cleared plates, the conversation grew serious. "I've been thinking about giving us another chance," Amelia said quietly, her voice trembling. "But I can't if you're not fully committed. I need more than an apology, Alexander. I need you to prove, day by day, that you won't break my trust again." His eyes shone with relief and yearning. "I will. I've even met with lawyers to draft a postnuptial agreement. If I ever breach our vows again, you'd be entitled to a significant portion of my assets. I want you to feel safe, secure." Amelia's heart pounded. The gesture was monumental, an acknowledgement of how deeply he regretted his deception. "It's a start," she murmured, tears forming. "I just hope it's enough." Before the conversation could go further, Amelia gasped, pressing a hand to her belly. A fierce tightening gripped her abdomen. She winced. Oh, she stammered, eyes wide with alarm. Alexander rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" She grimaced through another contraction. "I'm not sure," she whispered. "It feels like the baby might be coming too soon." Panic flared in his expression. Without hesitation, he grabbed her coat and ushered her out the door, calling for the driver to bring the car around. Amelia's breath came in ragged bursts, each contraction sharper than the last. The ride to the hospital blurred in a haze of headlights and frantic worry. At the maternity ward, nurses quickly wheeled her into a room, hooking her up to monitors. Alexander hovered, heart hammering. A doctor examined Amelia, face etched with concentration. "It seems we're looking at early labor," he said calmly. "We'll do everything we can to ensure both mother and child are safe." Fear coiled in Amelia's chest. She gripped Alexander's hand, tears forming. Despite all the bitterness and heartbreak, in that moment, he was the only person she wanted by her side. He squeezed back, voice catching. "I'm right here," he murmured, the sincerity in his tone undeniable. Whether the labor ended in a healthy birth or another twist of fate remained uncertain. But for the first time since the betrayal, they faced a crisis as a unified front together, trembling but resolute. The hours that followed were a blur of hospital corridors, monitors beeping, and hushed conversations among medical staff. Amelia fought through waves of contractions, anxiety coursing through her. Alexander stayed at her side, wiping the sweat from her brow, whispering reassurances. He was calm, yet visibly afraid, and that vulnerability spoke volumes. After what felt like an eternity, the doctors declared that while the labor was premature, it wasn't dangerously so. Amelia still needed to deliver, but the baby's vitals appeared stable. By the next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital window, illuminating the moment their daughter, Lillian Crowley, entered the world with a sharp cry that resonated with hope and promise. Tears of relief and exhaustion rolled down Amelia's cheeks as they placed the tiny, wriggling infant on her chest. Alexander stood by, awestruck, gently stroking the baby's delicate hair. "She's perfect," he whispered, voice quavering. In the subsequent hours, Lily was transferred to a special neonatal area for observation, ensuring her early birth didn't pose any complications. Doctors gave an encouraging prognosis, though caution was necessary. Amelia was allowed a moment of rest, lulled into a fragile peace by the knowledge that her daughter was safe. When she awoke, Alexander sat beside her hospital bed, holding a small bouquet of lilies, mirroring their child's name. "Thank you," Amelia whispered, her voice weak, "for being here. I needed you." His eyes shone with gratitude. "I'm never leaving your side again. I know I have so much to prove. But let me start by being the father Lily deserves." A hush settled over them, the weight of the last few months pressing in. With her baby's life now tangible and precious in her arms, Amelia realized that while the future remained uncertain, love still lingered in her heart for the man she once believed in wholeheartedly. Healing wouldn't be swift, but it might be possible. Bernard Addison arrived soon after, quietly stepping in to check on mother and child. He smiled at the news of Lily's stable condition, nodding approvingly at Alexander's presence. "It seems you two have weathered quite a storm," he commented softly. "This little girl is a ray of light in a dark time." Outside the hospital, reporters hovered like moths to a flame, waiting for a statement on the new Crowley heir. But for once, the public eye felt distant to Amelia. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and a premature labor, yet in that tiny hospital room, the glare of scandal receded, overshadowed by Lily's innocent cry. Alexander leaned over the bassinet where Lily dozed. He turned to Amelia, voice thick with emotion. "I know our story isn't tied up in a bow. I'm not naive enough to think I've redeemed myself overnight, but if you'll let me try, I want to rebuild this family with you, Amelia's breath caught. She remembered the devastation of the Grand Regency lobby, but also this new life they had created. Slowly, she reached out and entwined her fingers with his. "We'll take it one day at a time," she said, tears glimmering. "For Lily. And for us." And so, in a swirl of heartbreak and hope, they embarked on a road to possible reconciliation, knowing that trust would have to be earned, that love would be tested, and that the greatest victory might lie in their willingness to heal step by fragile step. From lavish hotel lobbies to hushed hospital halls, the story of Alexander and Amelia Crowley reminds us that even the most powerful can be undone by lies, and that love, once fractured, demands courage and humility to rebuild. Their public scandal exposed hidden wounds, forcing them to confront the betrayal that nearly shattered their family. Yet in the midst of heartbreak, the arrival of their daughter, Lily, became an anchor, a living symbol of second chances. Whether Alexander and Amelia fully restore their marriage or choose separate paths, they've learned that truth, accountability, and steadfast devotion are the only foundations for genuine forgiveness. If you found yourself moved by their journey, torn between outrage and hope, please like this video. Share it with others who appreciate raw, real-life drama, and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories of resilience, redemption, and the human heart's fierce capacity to love again. Thank you for watching.